Oh, fuck. Fuck. I complete I completely blanked on Dallas, dude. It's the Boris Jerk podcast, the last NBA podcast to release its 23-24 standings projections. Max, let's get right into it. Before we start with the standings, though, we wanted to do some quick League Pass rankings. Unfortunately, some of the larger audience pods in the market got to this segment before us. So our little spin on it is we're going to focus on the lottery teams from last year, excluding all like the superstar laden contenders in our League Pass rankings. Do you want to get started? I know, Max, you wanted to just mention a few of the most watchable good teams before we talk about the most watchable mediocre teams.
Yeah, there's a few different groups of League Pass teams in my mind. There's like teams that have some must-see element about them, and those are the only good teams that I'll touch on, like the Lakers. Interested to always see how LeBron and AD look. I'm selfishly interested in if their draft prospects get any run this year because they drafted Jalen Hood-Schifino and Maxwell Lewis, who are two of my favorite guys in the draft. Golden State, Steph is always must watch. Curious to see how Chris Paul fits into their system. We're recording this after the first night of games on Tuesday. So even though the Warriors lost, I was actually pretty bullish on how Chris Paul fit into their system. I think he's going to keep their bench unit afloat. Bucks, Giannis Dame pick and roll. Enough said. Got to see what that looks like. And then Denver is just an unstoppable offense. But those teams are boring. We've seen them for years and years and years. We know they're going to be good. The lotto teams, there's the must-see elements in my mind. There's the ones who are kind of a youth movement with just fun, exciting prospects. And then there's 4 or 5 teams that are just pretty blah for me, who are probably going to be at the end. But we can go through and pick our favorite ones. Do you want to pick first, or should I pick first?
You pick first. 14 picks, 7 apiece, and then we will hop into our 1 through 8s for both conferences.
All right. So the first pick I thought was going to be very straightforward until I watched the preseason. But I'm still going to go with Oklahoma City as my first pick. They have Shea, who is a borderline top 10 player in the NBA. They have Chet Holmgren, who's going to be in the Rookie of the Year race if he stays healthy and is sort of a discount version of Wembanyama, but still just kind of a novelty, a marvel to watch on the floor with his fluidity and toughness for his build. So I'm curious to see what he looks like and how much he can elevate their defense as a team that really didn't have a center last year. They've got Jalen Williams, my favorite guy from last year's draft, who I think has it in him to jump to near all-star levels this year. He may not make it because the West is so deep, but I could see a big second-year leap coming from him. Josh Giddey, always fun to watch with his intoxicating passes. And then you never know if you're going to get a sighting of one of their other young, interesting players. So OKC was one for me. It was by a lot before the preseason. After seeing the preseason, it's by a little to my second team. I'm not sure if you'll pick them or not, but OKC won.
Yep, it's got to be OKC. It's a blessing that they finished as the quote 9 seed last year, and they're on the board for you. Can't argue with it. Goes without saying, the team I'm going to watch the most this year is the Blazers, as always, but they can't be my first pick because I'm going to try to be objective here. And yeah, I'm gonna swallow my pride and take the Spurs.
Yeah.
And here's to be a hater, to mix in my haterade, I'll say like these are gonna be the only weeks that we'll ever get to see Victor Wembanyama at the peak of his powers.
How dare you?
Jokes aside, like I really do worry about the 7'4" frame and like lower body entanglements, especially in the paint, especially at his current weight. And like he looks like he's a sort of KD shape. Like I don't think Wembanyama's gonna have a drastically thicker frame in a few years. Like I think this is sort of what he looks like. in that Ralph Sampson sort of body archetype. And that's fine because he already looks like a dominant NBA player. I just worry about longevity, durability. But I can't fucking wait to watch the Spurs. Because if he's anything like he's been in the preseason, I was very wrong having Scoot ahead of him. Um, and yeah, and then there are many guys actually on the Spurs that I'm super excited to watch. Vassell's jump shot looks different than it did at Florida State, which scared me in the last couple of years, but
Mm.
like he's making them and the Spurs paid him, which tells me everything I need to know. I like Keldon for the things he does. I like Trey Jones. I think he's probably more like Tyus, like should be like the best backup in the league. Um, but maybe not. Maybe with more talent this year, he's a really serviceable starter. I'm trying to think. CD Sissoko. I mean, are they even going to let him play this year? I don't know.
What
But
about your main guy,
who?
Jeremy?
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna finish with the cherry on top, the
Oh
Jeremy
yeah.
on top.
Hmm.
Jeremy Sohan, who apparently they are gonna experiment with starting at point guard.
Hmm.
Really did not see that coming. That's like the rare preseason news that really get rocks your socks and gets you ready for the year. That isn't
Yeah.
just clickbait like Jimmy and Spo had some argument in practice. This was some like real juice. I can't wait to watch Sohan. I'm a little bit worried about what that means for the spacing of their offense, but defensively, like they might be really good, like right away.
Also,
Spurs, it's a fun show over there.
yeah, and spacing wise, unfortunately for Trey Jones, I believe his 3-point percentage is about the same as Jeremy Sohan's, or at least on catch and shoots, it's about the same, and which is both very bad, like both in the 20s. So I'm not sure if it does that much for their spacing negatively. But yeah, when they said they wanted to play Wemby basically at the 4 next to a 5, I thought that was, I mean, smart to protect him physically somewhat as he develops, but made me wonder, like, okay, is Sohan going to be a 6 man? Like, what's the role for him here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if they're putting him at point guard, I think that could be a really good defensive lineup. I mean, Wemby's already entering, like, there's a lot of, people already projecting him to make all defense his first year, lead the NBA in blocks or something like that, which I think is totally reasonable. I mean, against the Warriors in their preseason game this weekend, in the span of about 90 seconds, he blocked 2 Andrew Wiggins jumpers, a Clay jumper, and then leaked out for a dunk and had a 3 and maybe another step back jumper. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't mean to.
I didn't even try to really explain what I've seen from Wemby so far in preseason
It's
because
insane.
it doesn't make sense. And I was joking with you over text that like my new take might just be he's already better than Jordan. But yeah, yeah, and Zach Collins at the 5 looks like the way they're going to go at least early. Wemby at the
Mhm.
4, which makes a lot of sense to me. Like Zach Collins is a serviceable starting center if he's healthy. Like he does a lot of things well. Um, I don't know about serviceable starter, but he's good enough,
Yeah.
and especially with his shooting touch, like that makes it easier to play Wemby and Sohan together. So yeah, and obviously take some of that physical burden off of Wemby early on. It's a really really fun team, and yeah, I think some people are going to make money on their over under because yeah, Wemby just looks like the kind of rare guy who comes into the league and is an all-star consideration right away.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be better than Paolo was last year if he can stay healthy.
Yes. All right. After 2, there's a drop off for sure. Those are 2 like can't miss teams. Number 3 was tough because there's some which I know will be fun to watch all year. And then there's one team which, when healthy, caveat, is my favorite team to watch in the
Oh
NBA.
god.
And I'm ranking this based on must see elements. And I could be a smart drafter and wait till later because I know you aren't going to pick this team. But
Yeah.
when Zion Williamson is healthy, the New Orleans Pelicans are just intoxicating to watch. So I'm putting them at number 3. He's probably not going to play more than 40 games. If he does play 60 games, we'll get to the standings later. They're the single hardest team to rank in the standings. If he plays 60 games, they're going to be a top 4 seed. If he plays 20 games, as he's wont to do, they'll probably miss the play-in. But he's intoxicating to watch. I don't particularly love watching Brandon Ingram play, honestly, but can be fun. I love their young guys. I love Trey Murphy. if Zion doesn't play, I get to see my guy EJ Liddell out there. So I at least have that going for me. He had some nice weak side help in the preseason. See if he can build on that with some more minutes in the regular season. But yeah, I put him at 3, mostly because of Zion, and then they have some fun young guys. So yeah.
Can't argue with it. Zion, please eat minutes and not burgers this year. Okay, my second pick, yeah, the team that you probably expected me to take. I mean, yeah, I am just always interested to see like what's coming of Luca as he enters the thick of his prime. But I don't think I can do the Mavs.
Mm-hmm.
Just because even Luca at his best recently has looked a little too hardened for me.
Yeah.
So I'm picking from the heart, as you just did, and I'm going with the Orlando Magic.
Yep.
They just have a ton of young guys that I expect to be really good players. And they're not quite Thunder levels of what the fuck could this be in a few years, but they're high on that list. They might be number 2 in terms of like I really do expect the Magic to be contenders in 4 years, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
Just we haven't, we were so young the last time the Magic were really dangerous. Or
Mm-hmm.
the Dwight year in the but yeah, R.I.P. Dwight. But I think yeah, just the Magic, whether it's Suggs or Ant Black, Paolo, Franz, Wendell, Markel. I mean, they just have like 7 or 8 dudes that Blazers fans want to have around,
Yep.
and Knicks fans would too. Um, there's some annoying kind of podcast chat about like Paolo or Franz, which one is better. It doesn't fucking matter. They're both going to be all stars.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Paolo has the higher ceiling just for his physical gifts and yeah, his power. But and he has some of that young LeBron, young Giannis light kind of thing. And his passing is great. Paolo's shooting will be interesting to track. The passing is already there. The things he can do, putting the ball on the deck, and defensively, he's already shown strides on Team USA and like some versatility there that I didn't even know he had. Like the
Yeah.
the Paolo small ball 5 thing was not something that I saw coming out of Duke. So that's an exciting wrinkle for them. But yeah, and Wendell, one of my favorite non-elite starting centers in the league. Franz doing what he does, making winning plays for Germany and looking like he's 27 when he's what, like 21.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about Suggs. You know how I feel about Ant Black. I'm psyched to watch the Magic.
Yep. They would have been my pick there as well. It's unclear at this point whether they're going to start Suggs or Gary Harris or someone else of the two. I think they're leaning Suggs. And that starting lineup of Fultz, Suggs, Wagner, Paolo, and Carter could just be a hellacious defensive unit.
Yeah.
As long as they take care of the ball offensively, I think that could be one of the better defensive units in the league, just with the size, the athleticism, and then the overall headiness with most of those players. I was just playing with them in 2K last night, and the size is really overwhelming, although the shooting is definitely a problem. There's going to be a lot of bricks.
Were you pushing the pace though?
I was trying. On my good runs, I was pushing the pace. All right. Up next, I'm just going to pick Dallas. It's kind of by default because they're the best team, probably of any of these teams, except a healthy New Orleans. But I'm partially picking them because, like, whenever they're in a game with a good team, it's going to be like, oh, they're playing Dallas. I'd love to watch that. I don't know if I want to watch them play shitty teams because, like, Luca, as good as he is, until the playoffs is not particularly fun to watch just with his style. In the playoffs, it's fun to watch him try to pick apart like an elite defense. But if he's just going against like Washington on a Wednesday, it's a little redundant or repetitive. But still curious to see how the Luca Kyrie fit works. They should score a ton of points. Curious to see how them like relying on all these rookies goes. I think it sounds like they're already moving away from starting Omax at the 3. I think eventually they'll move away from starting Lively because having scouted him, I just don't think he's ready for NBA defense yet. I feel like he's too undisciplined. And it's just going to take him some time to adapt to that. But they'll start the year with Lively starting at the 5, and I imagine they'll probably close with Powell or Kleba or someone like that. But it's still worth putting them at 5 because of the talent and just to see what the hell happens with this Luka Kyrie situation.
Yep. No arguments. At the very least, you get some fun reality TV. I've been thinking I want to rewatch some like early first couple years of Luca because I don't remember feeling so bored by the watching experience. Maybe it was just the novelty of like new artist on the block. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's gotten stale the last couple of years. Watching Luca has become less fun, feels more predictable, rinse and repeat isolation ball. So yeah, but he is the right pick there for me. All right. Give me the Rockets
Yep.
at number 4 in our lottery league pass draft. Yeah, Tari Eason, the Dylan Brooks show now. You know I'm a Van Vliet guy. I wasn't the biggest Thompson brothers fan, but like Amen's got crazy tools. He'll be fun to watch. But my two favorite guys in this young core to watch will be Jabari Smith, whom I love, whom I had at number 1, which isn't looking great, but I'm dying on that hill. And Alperen Şengün, who we've been
Mhm.
saying now for a full year, like, can the dude play center defensively in the NBA? If he can, he's going to be special.
Mhm.
And Jalen Green is super interesting to me. I have him in 2 fantasy leagues this year. He seems like a lock to pull like 22, 4-4. The question is, will any of it matter?
Yeah.
Like, what will it actually look like in game? Um, will he try on defense? I think Udoka has a chance to set Jalen Green on a fantastic course, turn him into a tenacious defending ones and twos, and just like keep doing all of your awesome scoring stuff, become a more willing passer, use your athleticism to rebound, like all the things that get you on the floor for Ime Udoka are things that Jalen Green needs to do to become the guy they took at number 3.
Yeah. And it's tough. They took him at number 2, actually, I think.
Sorry, number 2. And
But
and if he doesn't do those things, he will be number 2.
yeah. But Houston's one of those teams where I love their roster and I still think they're going to be one of the 3 worst teams in the West.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's cruel. That's cruel to NBA fandom. It's like, yeah, I like them so much more than like the Raptors, who will definitely win more games.
yeah. Um, and they can throw a lineup out there, which can just be the most athletic lineup that maybe I've seen in years of Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, and Jabari Smith. Like that is just a hellacious lineup of athleticism and speed and leaping and power in a couple of cases. So yeah, that's who I would have taken as well. Number 7, I'll go with the Stones, Detroit Pistons.
Mhm.
This is mostly about Cade. If Cade
Yeah.
is great and you know on track to being an all-star player, this team is going to be fun to watch. And if they surround him with shooting, don't start, Isaiah Stewart, Jaden Ivey, and Asar Thompson at the 2, 3, 4. You can start some of them, just don't start all of them. You have to make room for Bogdan, make room for some Alec Burks, some Joe Harris. I think their
Yeah.
bench could be pretty good too. I'll talk about that more when we get to the standings, but that could make them at least, a little interesting. And Ivy, see if he has a second year leap in him because he has the potential to be one of those really athletic, bursty guards who just on any given night can kind of steal the show.
Yep. Cade almost was enough for me to take them over the Rockets, who just have a lot more guys, individual guys that I actually
The
am excited
problem
to.
the problem is if Cade gets hurt again or is not living
Yeah.
up to that, they're like at the bottom of this list.
It's a low floor selection. Hmm. Well, where do I want to go? I think as much as I love Tyrese Halliburton, I think this is where I'm comfortable taking Portland.
Yeah.
Um, the Scoot Henderson experience. Let's see how good he is. Uh, for all the talk about like, Wall, Rose, Westbrook type athleticism, I think he's close to that. He's been more ground bound in the preseason. He's and not necessarily in a bad way. I was saying to my brother, there's like a little bit of Chris Paul in the way that
Yes.
at such a young age, he's so comfortable putting you in jail with his dribble, keeping you on his back, the mid-range game, the mid-range faders, the baby bankers, and the passing. And he's made a few wild turnovers early, the kind of thing you expect for a rookie point guard of any talent level. But Scoot, Shaden, I don't know how Jeremy Grant is still on the team. Let's trade him at the deadline. And then DeAndre Ayton. Let's see if DeAndre Ayton wants to become a winning player. And at the very least, like, how great can his stats get? Rob Williams, not yet healthy, hopefully soon. I like him more just in a vacuum than DeAndre Ayton to this point in their careers if Rob Williams could stay healthy, but that feels like a long shot. Yeah. And I'm excited to watch Malcolm Brogdon before they trade him to a team that needs his composure more. But yeah, mostly it's about the Scoot and Shaden show. And yeah, there are not many more exciting backcourts in the league, period, at least for regular season purposes.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the Chris Paul comparison because I think I remember writing that verbatim in my notes when I was scouting him. Is like I saw him do a couple of these snake the pick and roll, get to the right elbow for a little fadeaway jumper, and I was like, that's a Chris Paul move.
Yeah.
He's been watching that tape for sure. Yeah, the thing I've always said with Scoot is of all, he might not be quite at the A++ level athleticism that like D Rose, Russell Westbrook, John Wall had coming into the league, but he's still probably at an A. And of all of those like super athletic point guards to come into the league, he is by far the most sort of ahead of the curve as far as feel for the game and touch in general and just sort of skill level to go with that athleticism. So he's going to be super fun to watch. I had them one spot behind Indiana, so I'm going to take Indiana. They're just going to be transition like Mavens, Tyrese, Obi Toppin, going to be a lot of dunks. Bruce Brown's going to, mess things up. Miles Turner giving them sort of a defensive presence, and excited to see if Mathurin has like a second year leap in him. And yeah, they just have a lot of interesting young players. They could be an interesting trade team as well. So I just think they're going to be fast paced, fun to watch, playing a lot of high scoring games. And yeah, curious to see if some of their young guys can take that next leap, from Halliburton, from like a all-star to an all NBA type of guy. Obi Toppin, if he can become like a starter level player consistently. And then Mathurin, if he can show some more flashes of potentially being a second star for them.
Yes, sir. All right. I am going with Darko Rajakovic's Toronto Raptors.
Yep.
And this is mostly about Scotty Barnes. Really interested to see what Scotty Barnes' year 3 looks like. Yeah, this is a weird Raptors team. Siakam might be on another team before the end of the year. I feel like we've said that for a couple of years now. But Pirtle, one of the better rim protectors in the league. Siakam, his status is kind of up in the air. OG, he's been dangled for years now. I don't know what's happening. And Schroeder, I guess, is at least on paper the starting point guard on opening night. But yeah, for me, it's the guy who technically starts at the 3 for them, Scotty Barnes. He might be their point guard by midseason if things go right. Yeah, his defense took a step back last year. His efficiency took a step back. I think his just like overall Q rating took a step back. There was there was that clip that surfaced of like him and Thad Young going at it. And
Quentin Grimes also, I haven't forgotten that.
Yeah. So got grimy. I just want I want to see Scotty Barnes bounce back in a real way. And it reminds me a little bit of Jason Tatum's sophomore year. When he was like looked so precocious and ready as a rookie, and then was like probably like the same his sophomore year, and we wanted a big leap. Barnes definitely took a step back, and that's scary, but he's so talented. That I'm excited to see like if he can turn things around and get the Raptors back in a winning, at least in a Masai Ujiri positive direction.
Yeah. We've reached the blah tier. I have Toronto kind of between blah and youth movement just because they have Scotty Barnes. There's going to be some rough nights with this team just because they have so little shooting. Like if they start Schroeder, Barnes, Anunoby, Siakam, and Pirtle, like Anunoby's the only shooter in that lineup who strikes like a modicum of fear into a
Yeah.
defense's heart when they're open.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll have some exciting nights with their athleticism, and they're going to be kind of annoying to play against for teams because of their length. But yeah, they're going to have some nights where it's like Gary Trent or Grady Dick is going to have to make a lot of threes for them.
Yeah.
um,
Should
all
we
right,
even finish this draft?
we could do it real quick, like 15 seconds on each. I'll go Utah next, just for like Laurie
Yeah.
Markkinen, Kessler. See if their rookies Hendricks or Keontae George can flash anything, but that's about it.
Yuta Watanabe. I might. Yeah. Give me Bilal Coulibaly's Washington Wizards. As we were talking about the potential reality TV of Dallas. I mean, you mentioned, was it last pod or two pods ago, that Jordan Poole, put $1 on him to lead the league in scoring.
Yeah.
Uh, that's going to be an interesting psychological roller coaster. But on top of that, you won't find a bigger Denny Avdia guy, and I love Bilal. And Kuzma's a sick player.
Mhm.
So yeah, they have some guys to watch, and I'm surprised that the Wizards fell this far in this illustrious draft.
Yeah, I'm workshopping Kuzma for their dynamic duo of
Oh
Jordan
my
Poole and
God.
Kyle Kuzma.
Nice. Yeah. I just hope that they let Koulibaly cook. Because whereas on the Blazers, I'm like, I really want I really want the Blazers to make Shaden earn his minutes and his shots. I don't think that he necessarily should just be born into like 18 shots a game on a really bad team. I think just for the type of player he is and his inefficiencies and his kind of looseness with the ball, I think that lack of discipline could actually really be to his detriment.
Yeah,
Whereas Bilal enters the league with a lot of like winning characteristics. He's already playing really good defense. His instincts are there. He's not a chucker. And so I would like push him to shoot and to
yeah,
like hone scoring skills. Different approach than the Shaden one.
yeah. I hesitate with this comparison, but like um Frank Ntilikina is someone who came into the league with like a lot of physical tools and just kind of Knicks fans, you would always be wanting him to just like try to drive to the basket, like see if it
Yeah.
works. Koulibaly's got way more athletic explosiveness than Ntilikina has, but you just
Yeah,
want
and
him
he's
to,
way bigger and he's way
yeah,
bigger.
he's bigger, he can jump higher, all that stuff. But you want to see him really flash some of that stuff.
I think
All right.
Ntilikina attacked the rim so little that I convinced myself that he was great at it. We just literally hadn't seen it. Like
Yeah.
no, well, he never failed. He just didn't do it.
Speaking of Frank Ntilikina, I believe he's in Charlotte now. I'm gonna take them next.
Okay.
Uh they have LaMelo Ball. Is he gonna be like this generation's white chocolate, or is he like gonna be an all-star level player? I guess he's already made an all-star team, but it was in a weak East. Curious
Yeah.
to see that as he sort of comes into the year healthy. And they had the second pick in the draft, who shouldn't have been the second pick, but Brandon Miller. Curious to see what he looks like. And that's about it. I like Mark
Yeah.
Williams, but yeah, they're not going to be
PJ?
super. PJ, yeah, they're not going to be super fun to watch. Hopefully, yeah, who knows what's going on with Miles Bridges, but
Yeah. He should
uh,
he should not be in the league.
no,
Mark Williams, my prediction is that by the end of the season, at least maybe second half of the year, Mark Williams is a really high level fantasy basketball center.
yeah,
Um, just the points and rebounds will be there. And to your point, I hope LaMelo is more than a fantasy player and more than like a 40 game a year guy.
hmm
Because the tools are ridiculous as ever. Yeah, let's see. You took Utah. Who's left? Chicago.
Chicago,
Is it only Chicago?
yep.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say anything about Chicago. When I
The
heard when Zach Lowe said that Pat Williams's team is expecting $200 million, or at least bargaining for it, man, it's a good time to be a professional basketball player.
they may be the most directionless team in the
Yeah.
entire NBA, and I have to think that Daryl Morey is holding out that he can trade Harden for either Levine or DeRozan if Chicago decides that it's just time to blow it up
Yeah.
a year too late. But yeah, I won't be watching many of their games this year. Although I will be in Chicago in a couple weeks and going to a Bulls game, but that might be the only one I watch all year.
Let's get Caruso on a good team
Yes.
if he's healthy. Okay. So how do you want to do standings?
This shit was hard.
Yeah. Let's start with the East, since I feel like the West just won the title. They're the home team.
Mm-hmm.
Uh I do you want me to just list my 10 to 1?
Sure.
I
Yeah.
started at 10. I had no interest in ranking tankers.
Sure. Do your play in actually, just 10 to 7. I'll see if I have the same
Okay.
four.
So this surprised me the more I thought about it because again, love Tyrese, but I have the Pacers at number 10.
Mm.
Pacers 10, Raptors 9, Magic 8, Hawks 7.
I had the same four teams, just with the Pacers and Magic flipped. I had the Pacers at 8, the Magic at 10. Yeah, I
Okay.
think Atlanta is a cut above the other three teams, but the other three are very similar. I see them all finishing within a win or two of each other, the Raptors, Magic, and Pacers. And it just kind of
Yeah.
depends on the degree to which their young players take steps. I don't think any of them are really, making noise beyond the play-in tournament, but yeah, for
Yeah.
the Magic I mentioned, I think their starters can be really good defensively. Yeah, and I touched on a lot of these teams in the lotto rankings already, but I'd say the Hawks are definitely a cut above the other three.
I'm willing to be wrong on the Magic at 8. I just think they're a team that talented to me looks to be like just a little bit ahead of schedule. And when you just line up the talent on the depth chart, Matt, like Orlando versus Indiana, and it's hard to put the Pacers above the Magic. But again, they have more veteran leadership. They have the Rick Carlisle effect. So I get what you're doing there.
Yeah, and I think the Pacers have a chance to like be a top 10 offense. In
Yeah,
fact, I think it's fairly likely. The Magic may be a top 10 defense. I think their starters certainly have the talent to be, and if they take care of the ball, that's possible. But I think of like that Pacers, Raptors, Magic trio, I feel like the Pacers have the best chance of having like a really good unit, either on offense or defense, as opposed to the other two, where I think they'll be a little more middling on either
yeah.
side. So that's why I leaned with the Pacers. And then Halliburton's probably the best player or he is the best player of anyone on those three teams.
Give me your 7 through 4 in the East.
Or 6 through 4.
Sorry, 6 through 4.
Miami at 6, although I'm probably gonna pick them to win in the first round of the playoffs. I've got Philly at 5, and I've got New York at 4.
Identical.
There we go. All right.
Yeah. The sooner the Sixers can get rid of James Harden, the greater the more I like their odds of being the 4 seed. That's just how much I like Tyrese Halliburton. I'm sorry, Tyrese Maxey. And yeah, and I think Tyrese Maxey's like ready.
Mhm.
I think he's just better than Harden now. And I hope that they're able to get something decent for Harden and that it isn't someone that takes the ball out of Maxey's hands too much.
Yeah.
Because
And
obviously already clearly the number 2 guy. Once Harden's gone.
sneakily, Philly's got a decent bench unit. Like Melton, assuming Harden's on the team, Melton, Kelly Oubre, Pat Bev,
Yeah.
Danny Green, Paul Reed. Like those are all serviceable bench players. Speaking of benches, with the Knicks at 4, I think they're gonna have the best bench in the league. I mean, they already almost had that last year, and they replaced Obi Toppin with Dante DiVincenzo, which I think is gonna elevate them even further in that regard. Plus, they only had Hart for about half the year and really took off after trading for him. So I think regular season they're going to be a really good team, and in the playoffs probably losing the second round again. But I don't think anyone in the East is beating either Milwaukee or Boston in the second round unless they have to play each other
Yeah.
somehow. But yeah, and I imagine we have the same top 3 of Cleveland at 3, Milwaukee at 2, Boston at 1.
I actually have Milwaukee at 3 and Cleveland at 2.
Okay.
And that's just like regular season depth and like desire to win. I think the Dame trade made Milwaukee a slightly worse regular season team and hopefully a more dynamic offensive playoff team. So no worries, Bucks fans. I still think the Bucks are going to get to the finals, spoiler alert.
Yep, me too.
But yeah, I think the Cavs continuity, angry revenge year after how awful that series was versus New York. Yeah, I think the Cavs are gonna have the wins advantage over Milwaukee. Who cares though? Yeah, I have the Celtics at number one. Um, the Bucks, supporting cast isn't the best it's been in the Giannis era, I'd say. And the players that matter on their team are on the wrong side of 30 outside of Giannis. So I just anticipate a little bit of rest of the vets, and that's why I ended up with the Bucks at 3.
Yeah, and the Bucks don't have too much trade fodder left, but if they could find a way
Yeah,
to add like Royce O'Neal from Brooklyn or something like that, or Dorian Finney-Smith would be the absolute,
yeah,
ideal, but I don't think they have any first to be able to trade for him. But Royce
yeah,
O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, whatever contender gets their hands on Alex Caruso, like that can be a real playoff kind of needle mover. But I'm
yeah,
not totally. I hope this isn't their final like rotation because I just don't trust that fifth starter. If it's going to be Beasley or I
yeah.
trust Connaughton, but it seems like the coaches don't. So, yeah,
And they traded the heart and soul of their defense for, yes, a Hall of Famer, but it's a month before the season, and like there will be growing pains.
mhm.
Uh, just like LeBron and Wade had growing pains. And my Blazers fans friends have already been like chirping the Bucks for like misusing Dame. It's been a little bit awkward the first couple preseason games, and
Yeah,
I think it's going to be awesome. It's just will take a little bit of time for those guys to figure out the best way to do it. And yeah, so that's why I think they'll probably take a minor step back regular season wise.
yeah. All right. So very few differences in the East, except Milwaukee. I had him at 2. You had him at 3. Cleveland. I had him at 3. You had him at 2. And then 4, 5, 6 was the same. And I had Indiana at 8, Orlando at 10. You had Orlando at 8, Indiana at 10. So, all right, on the East, we're on the same page. And it sounds like we both have Milwaukee coming out of the East in the playoffs, too.
So to reiterate, in the East, in the 1-8 matchup, I've got Celtics over Magic. 2-7, I've got Cavs over Hawks. 3-6, I've got Bucks over Heat. And then I've got the 5 seed over the 4 seed Sixers over Knicks. Not married to it. Sorry, Max. And then round 2, I've got Celts over Sixers and Bucks over Cavs. And the Bucks beat the Celtics to return to the NBA Finals.
I've got essentially the same thing, except I've got Heat over Cavs and Knicks over Sixers, but same second round result with Milwaukee and Boston winning and Milwaukee beating Boston in the conference finals.
Now, let's do the West. You're right. Probably starting at 1 is a little bit easier for the listener. So I'm just going to start going down, and you stop me when you have thoughts or disagreements.
Okay.
Uh, Number 1 in the West, the defending champs possess the number 1 player on the planet, Denver Nuggets. Do you have Denver at 1?
I have them at 2.
Do you have Phoenix at 1?
I do.
All right. Yeah, I have Phoenix at 2. I have the Lakers at 3. I have the Oklahoma City Thunder at number 4.
Spicy, but I like it.
I have Golden State at 5.
Okay, let's stop there.
Okay.
I've got the same 3, 4, 5 in a different order. I've got Golden State at 3, the Lakers at 4, and Oklahoma City at 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I think fairly high on the Warriors as a regular season team. I don't think that they really addressed their playoff issues in terms of size. Maybe they kind of addressed the issue of of just being very one-dimensional on offense, where like if teams take away Steph, they don't have much of a counter. Maybe Chris Paul can provide that, but in the regular season, their issue for years has been that their team craters when Steph leaves the floor, and I think Chris Paul will be able to stabilize that bench unit some. We saw it in the first game where they actually they outscored the Suns by a pretty significant margin in the minutes that Steph sat. It was just their starters had a terrible game with Draymond not playing. So I think they're going to be a pretty good regular season team, but I don't think they match up well with the Lakers in a playoff series and all that. We'll get to the playoff predictions. Lakers at 4, they're super deep. Potential for top 10 offense and top 10 defense. I think they have to lean more into their defensive identity, which is why I would play more Vincent, less Russell, more Jared Vanderbilt in the regular season at least. And then Oklahoma City at 5. You had Oklahoma City at 4, or was it 3?
I had Oklahoma City at 4. I thought about 3. Couldn't go that far.
Yeah.
So yeah. Should I hop to number 6?
Yes. All right. With the same teams in the top 5, go to 6.
Yeah. Number 6, I've got the 25 games of jawless Memphis Grizzlies.
Stop. I am low on the Grizzlies, and it's bitten me in the ass before. I have them at 9.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. That's crazy.
Listeners are going to figure out here if they haven't looked at the Western Conference. It gets insane as you start getting towards the end of the play-in, and you're like, wait, one of these teams isn't even going to make the play-in. But I don't know. The vibes.
I'm literally seeing them like walking out in the tunnel to like a recording of your voice.
All right, clip this and send it to them. The vibes are not good. You've got no job for 25 games, which is a lot of games. 25 games is like almost a third of the season. And he's also someone who tends to miss, 10 to 15 games with an ankle sprain here or there. So he very well may only play like 50 games this year. And on top of that, you've got no Adams.
I thought you were the conductor of the Bane train.
I love Bane, but it's not just about him. You've got no Adams. You've got no Brandon Clark. So your big situation is Jaren Jackson, who's awesome, but he's not like a anchoring physical presence in the sense of rebounding and screening and all those things. You've got Xavier Tillman, who is in a contract year and can make himself a lot of money this year.
Yeah.
But then once you get past that, like the big situation isn't great. In fact, it's bad. And then the wing situation is also like they have a lot of guys who I'd like as my third or fourth wing, like Aldama, Roddy can take a step, maybe with LaRavia, but they don't really have wings that are like super starter level caliber wings in the NBA. And on top of that, with the Smart trade, Smart is a better player than Dylan Brooks, no doubt. However, I don't know if the Smart, Bane, Ja trio, like playing them all at the same time is a great fit. And it's 3 guards. It's not like a wing. If you're throwing those 3 out there with Jaren Jackson and like Aldama, I just don't really love that lineup.
Zaire
Williams. Maybe he takes a leap, but just looking at them with no Adams, no wings who are like real starter level wings, the Ja suspension where he might only play 50 games this year with that, plus like, an inevitable weird fall where he has to miss a week or two, and just general kind of weird vibes. It feels stupid because Taylor Jenkins always has this team at or near the top of the Western Conference, but the West is just so good this year. I'm just going to go with my gut when I look at this team, and I don't think that the talent level is on par with some of the other teams in the West, and that's why I put them at 9. If they had Ja the whole year and just one of Adams or Clark, I'd probably have them closer to 5 or 6, but just with all those factors, and I think 5 to 11 in the West may be separated by 5 games. If that, there might be like a game or 2 each with like some tiebreakers. Yeah, that's why I put them at 9, and I agonized over it for a long time.
Yeah, it's just a bet on Ja being Ja when he gets back, Jaren continuing to improve, Bane picking up slack, Marcus Smart as a culture guy who refuses to be on a bad team. And I like Xavier Tillman. I'm excited for him, even though I'd feel better about this obviously if they had 65 plus games of Steven Adams.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Taylor Jenkins has established one of the best cultures in the league, and these guys just find ways to win 45 games. Just seems to happen. So
Might not be enough this year.
I wasn't willing to put them above some of these unproven teams that definitely look more stocked up right now, but just haven't done it yet.
Mm-hmm. So you had them at 6. Who was your 7?
New Orleans.
Hey, me too.
Yeah. And that's just sort of like mixing all of the potential outcomes into one number, 7.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked ad nauseum about Zion. Interesting post FIBA World Cup year for Brandon Ingram. After like he was so good against Shea in the play-in last year, I was feeling pretty positive about the Brandon Ingram experience, passing and facilitating. I'm scoring and facilitating. Now he's got to bounce back from not performing and fitting in as he should have with Team USA. I've talked about how much I love Dyson Daniels. I think he's going to take a leap. Trey Murphy's back in a few weeks. He's going to miss like the first 3 weeks or so of the year. But they have a ton of guys. CJ McCollum helps you win regular season games. Yeah, so I feel good about 7. As you mentioned before, they could be the 4 seed. They could miss the play-in. It just depends on health and culture.
Yep. I had them at 7 as well.
At number 8, I've got the team that doesn't really seem to exist when the playoffs come around, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah. I had them at 6 and kind of feel dumb about that, but I do have them at 6.
Well, they're deep. They're really deep. And I think I think Terrence Mann is a better basketball player than James Harden. I'm a radical. I'm a radical there, and so it pisses me off when I see the like Twitter jokes about like really Terrence Mann was the difference. Yes, he should be. He's really good, and he's on a great contract. I like, like I'll pick the Clippers to beat like 3 teams I've already mentioned in the playoffs if they're healthy. I just don't expect it to happen. Yeah, and regular season Clippers, not a good team to bet on. Their guys don't play.
Yeah, I had him at 6, and I do think a couple factors with them. One, this is the first time since 2021 maybe that PG and Kawhi have both entered the year healthy. So at least they're starting off on the right foot. Like they're not entering like last year. They came into the start of the season with Kawhi like coming off the bench and playing in these weird 4 or 5 minute bursts sometimes. That's not going to be a thing this year, at least yet. But at least they're starting on the right foot, unlike some other teams. And then I do think Russ can help them in the regular season. We've seen it in the past where he can just sort of scrounge out some regular season wins for you through sheer kind of energy and determination that you wouldn't have got otherwise. So yeah, that's why I put him at 6. You have to factor in they could make some sort of trade as well, whether it's for Harden or for Brogdon or some other sort of guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another hard team to rank.
With Russ still around and Harden potential trade target, you also have to factor in a complete meltdown, like a locker room meltdown, is also in the cards. Russ and Harden in the same locker room again is good content if it happens.
Yep.
At number 9, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay. We're getting now into like just the splitting hairs portion. Like there's going to be a 4-way tie.
I don't even want to debate because like whoever you have, I respect it. I have the Wolves at 9. And that's mostly just, I think Ant is a superstar in the making. I love Chris Finch. Like, I don't think he'll let them suck. The front court for this team it is just a fucking mess. We've done that segment. Prayers for Naz Reid. I hope he finds minutes and a chance to produce somewhere, sometime. But the Gobert Cat thing is a mess, and I there's enough talent here and enough good coaching that I think they still make the play in. But
Yeah,
that's where I'm at. The West is so good. You can be and Jaden McDaniels might come back and get them to 7 or 8. They could be the 6 seed. They have the talent. I'm just not gonna bet on this group of dudes outside of Ant to keep their shit together.
yeah. I was agonizing over who to put at 11. I put Minnesota at 11, and I think they have a lot of guys who I like. You've mentioned him. Mike Conley is another one. I think people who are high on, we're not going to talk about the Jazz, I don't think, but people who are high on the Jazz this year, they won a lot of the games they won last year when they had Mike Conley on their team, and they were a lot worse after they traded him.
Yeah.
Uh, so he's a really valuable piece. I love Nas. Can't believe they let Nas down with not having traded Karl Anthony Towns yet. Please don't trade him to the Knicks. Side note, Leon, don't do it. But yeah, they have a lot of players I really like, but I don't think they're going anywhere until they trade Towns because the team just doesn't make sense with the way that it's currently constructed. And they were better without him last year. And I think that's a trend that'll continue this year.
Yeah. Even with McDaniels back, they're pretty thin. Like not a great bench here. Um, it would be, that they're gonna need like another really good Kyle Anderson season. They need Troy Brown to give them minutes. They
Nah,
need they need Leonard Miller to be ready as a rookie. Like just some things that are not ideal if you're trying to make the playoffs in this stacked West.
yeah. Alexander Walker as well, a little bit.
Yep. Yep. Nah. All
Nah,
right. I've got the Kings at 10.
me too.
I'm significantly below consensus on Sacramento. They shot the lights out last year. I just refuse to believe that Mike Brown is the mastermind behind like a historically great NBA offense. Um, I think Mike Brown is a sick defensive coach. So last year doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I'm expecting a regression. And it's not because the Kings are bad. I actually think that they're a pretty solid team. It's just that's how ridiculously competitive this conference is this year.
Yep.
I'm expecting a leap from Keegan, but not quite enough to get this team above 10. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. The Fox Sabonis 2-man game is great. If it's a healthy Sabonis, maybe I end up looking dumb here, but I just don't think the Kings are going to be able to um maintain the momentum they established last year.
Yeah. I'm in the same page. I've got him at 10. I don't love their depth. After their starting five, I like Monk. Mitchell has some moments. Duarte kind of regressed last year. Maybe Vazenkov is going to be a useful player for them, but yeah, I think they're a good team. They're going to be really fun to watch, but I feel like every year we see there's a team that kind of overachieves out of nowhere, and the next year everyone expects them to keep building on that and either maintain or get better. But time and time again, we see them kind of, revert back to more their true destiny. Like last year, Dallas made it to the conference finals kind of out of nowhere. And I think a lot of people expected them, even after losing Brunson, to still be a home court playoff team. And they regressed all the way out of the play-in.
Yeah.
Atlanta, a couple years ago, making it to the conference finals, and the next year being an 8 seed in a not super strong Eastern Conference. The Knicks in 2021 getting a top 4 seed that year, that like first Julius Randle good season. The next year didn't even make the playoffs. Like we see this time and time again with teams that overachieve and then, get people's hopes up and then regress. And I think with the strength of the West this year, I think they're a prime candidate for that regression, though I still think they'll be above 500. I still think they're going to be one of the best offenses in the league, but they're just 9 teams I like better. I noticed one team you did not mention who you must have at 11 is the Dallas Mavericks. Is that correct?
Oh, fuck. Fuck. I complete I completely blanked on Dallas, dude.
Where would you have Dallas?
I would have Dallas. I would have Dallas at 9.
Okay.
Fuck. Yeah, I think I'd have Dallas at 9, right after the Clippers.
Okay. Yeah, I had them at 8. So My play-in is New Orleans 7, Dallas 8, Memphis 9, Sacramento 10, and then Minnesota on the outside looking in at 11. So then you'd have Sacramento on the outside of the play-in at 11.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah,
Yeah.
with Dallas, uh, they need a center. That's my main takeaway. I don't trust Derek Lively to be their starting center on a playoff team this year. So whether that's trading for Robert Williams or Clint Capella, whomever, DeAndre Ayton, if Portland decides they don't want to hang on to him, they need someone who can anchor their defense and run a reliable pick and roll with Luka. But I think Kyrie and Luka is going to be a borderline top 5 offense, almost guaranteed. And defensively, they're going to be bad. But if they can, be around 20th in defense as opposed to like 29th or whatever they were last year after trading for Kyrie, still, I think this team has enough talent to make it into the playoffs. But all the talk about them being like a championship contender and sort of, being, I feel like it's always the list of like the odds that people list for championship. I feel like everyone always ends with Dallas and they're above other teams that I think are like going to be finished much above them in the standings. So I don't see that in their future, but I do think they will at least make the playoffs, which they didn't last year.
If Luka can win a round with this supporting cast, like I'll revert right back to like keeping him in like the top 2-3 players in the world conversation, which he's drifted out of a little bit, just being on after last year's like shit show. But yeah, the reason I forgot to list Dallas is that it's impossible for me to put Luka's team at 9 and not feel like shit about it. But it just doesn't make sense to me. I can't get Dallas up to 7.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. They don't have the supporting characters that they had a couple of years ago. You know how I feel about the Kyrie trade. He might get his stats this year. He might play games, but like I'd just rather have Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock and like the guys that were doing 3-and-D things around Luka that got them to helped them get to that conference finals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just looking at the West, it's insane. Like, I mean, we can both agree. I think the Suns and Nuggets
Dinwiddie.
Dinwiddie.
Sorry, I just shout out Dinwiddie. He deserves a mention for that trade.
Sorry, I thought that was some sort of Dinwiddie Tourette's. So the Suns and Nuggets are definitely going to be locks for the playoffs. But of like Warriors, Lakers, Thunder, Clippers, Pelicans, Dallas, Memphis, Sacramento, and Minnesota, it's just crazy that 4 of those teams are going to be in the play-in. 3 won't make the playoffs, and 1 won't even make the play-in. Like the West this year is just going to be insanity. Houston could maybe push for the play-in, but I would be surprised. Same with San Antonio if Wembanyama is just like, a Hall of Famer already. But yeah, do you quickly want to run through your West playoff predictions?
Yeah, I guess my round 1 is completely chalk, but when you have the Thunder at 4, chalk is a little bit spicy. So I've got 1-8. I've got Denver over the Clippers. Sorry, Bomber. You continue to be haunted by the Joker. 2-7. I've got Suns over Pels. 3-6. I've got Lakers over Grizzlies. And 4-5. I've got Thunder over Warriors. Wow. Passing of the torch, perhaps. Then I've got Denver beating OKC and the Suns beating the Lakers. So I've got Denver beating Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals and a repeat title for the Denver Nuggets over Milwaukee. Let's call it 7 games out of respect for these gods.
All right. Very similar to me. I've got Suns over Mavs in the first round, which would just be a glorious first round series with the KD, Kyrie, Luka Phoenix, Luka Booker. Like that.
Oh yeah, in that case, Luka's winning a title.
Yeah. Then I've got Nugs over Pelicans, which would also be just kind of an interesting contrast in styles between Jokic and Zion if he is playing at that point. Warriors over Clippers and Lakers over Thunder, though I think that would be kind of like that first KD Russ playoff year where they went up against the Lakers in the 1-8 matchup in the first round and really made Kobe and Gasol sweat. Second round, I've got Suns over Lakers, though I think that'd be a good series, and Nugs over Warriors, Nugs over Suns in the conference finals. And I have Milwaukee over Denver in the finals, mostly because I think we just haven't seen a repeat champion in a long time. And that's why I'm going to go with Milwaukee, but both those teams are dynamite. Interesting that we have the same conference finals and finals teams, despite the fact that it feels like one of the more kind of parity rich seasons in recent memory.
Yeah, it's I think Denver is better than Milwaukee, but it's like you said, that repeat tax is hard to ignore. Like I kind of just want to pick Milwaukee because repeating almost never happens. But I followed my heart and I gave Joker another ring. This has been the most amateur podcast in the NBA community. Thanks to yours truly, but it was also a lot of fun. Do you have anything to add before we wrap this up?
Nope, just happy the season's here and we're done with preseason content. We'll be back with stuff talking about real games and how teams are looking and some of our young players that we're tracking. So, yeah, excited for this season.
All right. What a year it's going to be. Sending good vibes to everyone's fantasy teams. It's been the Boris Dirk podcast. We'll be back soon. Peace.